What are the greatest hang-ups you find that young people have today? I suppose guilt, anxiety would be... There's a fly buzzing around here.
Maybe it's protesting.
Protest? You find a lot of anxieties? That's a word that is used very often by psychotherapists today, anxiety,
yes,
fears, guilts.
It's above all confusion, and consequently, and very often unearned guilt. Some of it is earned, all right, if people consciously do what they know to be wrong, but the more tragic thing is unearned guilt. Young people and older ones too, who accept guilt because of the wrong moral standard, who are really not guilty, but are made to feel guilty by today's culture.
Who sets the moral standards? People say the churches should set the moral standards, the parents should set the moral standards.
The philosophers.
The philosophers set them.
Properly. Now you say who should? Historically, yes, the church has set them for much too long and with disastrous consequences. But if you ask me who should, philosophers.
And are they?
Not as they stand today, no. No, as they would be.
But not all philosophers have the same judgments, do they?
No. And therefore, what is the arbitrary reason?
Well, it has to come down to the individual again.
Each individual has to decide what he concludes is right. But then, how will determine who is objectively right? The one who can prove his case. The one who can prove the kind of code of morality he advocates without any contradictions.
I read an article of yours recently. Someone sent it to me about, you were talking about the draft, freedom, and the war, and etc. About that a country should not require or has no right to require of an individual, I may be not having the context quite right, to serve in a... You said it a while ago that if a country is attacked, people defend and will fight. But you didn't think it was right for a country to demand of its citizens. A conscripted army was not a good idea.
No, it is a very immoral idea. It is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Can we explore that a wee bit now? We got a few boos there, which is to be expected. Anytime anybody has any views that don't go according to the norm, you're going to have some antagonism. But that's why we want to talk about these things.
Oh, my views will probably be the norm of the future, but not right now.
You say conscripted army, an army by conscription that's drafted, is usually not an effective army,
that military authorities have repeatedly testified that it is not an effective army, that a volunteer army, an army of men who know what they're fighting for, speaking in practical terms, is much more effective, much better army. But first, the moral issue underlying it. I say that no single individual has the right to demand the life of another individual. Each man is the owner of his own life. That is the meaning of the idea that a man has the right to life, to his own life, not anybody else's. Well, if no single individual has the right to your life or mine, 10 million of them or 2 billion do not acquire that right by ganging up on one man. No man has the right to demand the life of another, therefore neither has a group, nor a nation, or nor a country. Men do not have the right to the life of another human being.
Now, of course, your opponents will say, but you're born in a country and in freedom, and people are trying to take over the world, and if we do not stand fast now and protect our freedoms, we may be lost. What is your answer to that?
That this is a contradiction, because what it amounts to is saying, since people are trying to take away your freedom, give it up yourself. That is the sole meaning of this kind of argument. You do not descend to your enemy's level in order to defend yourself, morally speaking. Practically speaking, of course, it doesn't work.
Well, war, first of all, is terribly stupid. You are not saying, of course, that if this country was not attacked, the people would fight.
I would say if it was attacked, yes, people would, because people have always fought for a free or even a semi-free country. If you ask me, is it proper to fight when your country is attacked in self-defense? Yes, I would say certainly, and men should volunteer to fight in such a case, because it is in defense of their own rights and their own freedom. but a country does not have the right to compel them to fight, particularly in a war like Vietnam, in which the United States have no interest whatever. We have nothing to gain by that war, and it is draining this country. Therefore, I am enormously opposed to the whole Vietnam mess, but for the opposite reasons from those that those Vietniks are yelping about. I do not agree with them, but I am against the war in Vietnam because it is a useless and senseless war, and it does not serve any national interest.
We'll be right back after this brief message. Stay with us. I don't know. We've got a couple of flies. I don't know what it is about those. They'll drive you crazy. What would you like to discuss? There's so many questions. Obviously, we're talking about the war. It becomes an emotional tug-of-war with many people, doesn't it? Because you hear the words patriotism, freedom, communist enslavement, and you think sometimes people get emotionally involved in it rather than rationally exploring it?
Today, yes. But that is the whole trend of today's culture, that people act on the direction of their emotions.
What is your answer to the people who say if we do not stay fast in Vietnam and we leave, that all of Asia will follow and eventually we will be fighting the war in the United States?
I would say Asia is not the place to start opposing communism. I would say we have given up so much in Europe, where if you want to defend civilization, I say if, that's the place to begin. But strictly speaking, if we wanted to save the world from communism, it's not necessary to go to war. All what we have to do is stop helping them economically, stop building bridges to them, which have supported them for 50 years now. That country would collapse of its own evil if the semi-free world did not constantly help them.
Now, you were born in Russia.
Yes.
You were born in now Leningrad, St. Petersburg,
right.
Then at the time. Obviously, you were tremendously opposed to communism, and it's what it stands for.
Not for that reason.
But not for that reason.
No.
Because of the evil of...
Of the idea of communism. I've never been particularly patriotic about Russia, because I was very young at the time of the revolution. I was 12. But the whole Russian culture, I am opposed to it. It is a mystical culture. All that I like about Russia is some of her writers and some of her music, but that's about all. I am much more American in fundamental principles than I'm Russian.
You think it is possible to live, now we have existed fairly well with Yugoslavia and some of the other countries who are communistic without too much problem. Do you think it's possible in the long run to coexist with a communist China? This seems to be the big fight of the Western world, is the containment of communist China.
A free country can coexist with anyone and incidentally free the rest of the world, by example, if it is free itself and if it has a firm domestic and foreign policy. Remember that the United States destroyed tyranny, serfdom, and slavery all over the world, not by fighting wars, by example, by free trade. A free country destroys barriers gradually, but for that you need a proper political philosophy. We had the beginnings of it in the 19th century, not the full case, and we lost the case. Why did we lose? Because capitalism cannot coexist with the morality of altruism. If and when we return to a proper political system, it wouldn't be a return and going back. It's going forward because it has never yet fully existed. But it would have to be on the basis of an appropriate morality, a rational morality of self-interest. And in that case, you would not have to fight wars. Because I'll call this to your attention. The 19th century was the most peaceful period in history. The only period without a major world war between the end of the Napoleonic Wars and World War I. And that was the closest to capitalism that the civilized world had come. Contrary to all the popular nonsense, capitalism does not lead to wars. That is the peaceful system, and that has been demonstrated in historical practice. But today, with the kind of mixed economy and mixed philosophies that we stand for, we will ultimately probably have to fight, unfortunately. If we had better ideas, a country like Russia or Yugoslavia, for the whole damn world would not be any problem or any threat to the United States.
Do you think that day is going to come? We don't seem to be getting too much smarter.
Nobody can predict the immediate future. I don't know. Men have free will. It is possible. I don't see any large-scale sign of it yet, but on the other hand, America is the one country which could not collapse to statism. It's contrary to this whole past and all its basic premises, whereas Europe always was statist. I don't believe that America could go statist, though what kind of trouble we would get into on the way to liberation, I don't know.
Thank you. We're going to take station identification. We'll be right back. We've been talking the past half hour with Айн Рэнд, and Buster Crabbe, who was scheduled to be on tonight, will be with us next week. We got talking here, and I think everybody wanted to hear what you had to say. Now, a lot of people probably do not agree with a lot of your views, and when Miss Rand agreed to appear on the show, she only asked one thing. She says, he won't attack me. And I said, no, I wouldn't do that, because I don't think it's a good idea to invite a guest on the show and then take issue with their views, or to bring somebody else on with opposing views and have them sit and yell at each other for half an hour. I'd much rather have you here and express your philosophy, and other times we've had other people on the show who may have opposing views, but I think it makes for a much easier show, and people get more information from it that way.
Oh, of course. I couldn't agree with you more.
This is your magazine called The Objectivist, which does explain, and we only briefly touched into your philosophy tonight.
If anyone wants full proof or greater discussion, this is where they will find it, in the magazine of which I am co-editor with Nathaniel Brandon, The Objectivist.
Why is it that people, we talked about, you said you were an atheist, and why does that word bring up such violent reaction from people?
I think mainly by surprise.
You say, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in a creator, and they're not quite willing to...
I've never found many people who did believe in God, but the idea of declaring yourself to be an atheist frightens them.
Really? That's going on record, huh?
That's my impression of people.
That always reminds...
Also, I must say, I don't associate with religious people. Not too much.
Really?
Well, not intimately, therefore I would not know what...
Do you find some religious people who are intellectual?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's perfectly compatible to be intellectual and still believe in supreme being, isn't it?
Perfectly compatible, no.
It's not
Some
perfectly
people
compatible.
combine it all that way.
Айн, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you. We'll see you on Monday.
This program was pre-recorded.